Good afternoon, fellow citizens. Welcome back to the Citizens Chat Show. My name is Masesa Demaino, and of course, as usual, every Friday we here discussing issues political, social, economic, and everything that really affects our country, Uganda. And these discussions are on our YouTube page, Chat Show UG, on Twitter, on the Civic Space TV, on YouTube. Please follow these conversations, and of course, live on Facebook. We're also there. These discussions are there. And today, of course, we just had the celebrations of the 36 years of NRA, NRM into the governance of Uganda. And we need to take stock of the 36 years of their stay and, of course, role in Uganda. And to discuss this, my panel is joined by Dr. Deus Kamunyu. Dr. Deus is the Chairperson MUASA, Makerere and Association, Staff Association. Yeah, Kamunyu, welcome back.
Thank you.
I think this is your third or fourth time?
My third time.
Third time.
Yes.
Yeah, welcome back.
And I'm happy to be here to discuss things as a child of NRM. I was a little boy.
Yeah. And of course,
you know what happened
thereafter. Then our regular panelist, Sarah Bireete, the Executive Director of the Center for Constitutional Governance. Sarah, welcome.
Thank you, and good afternoon.
And our big and maiden appearance on this show, we are privileged to have him, Mugisha Muntu, the President of the Alliance for National Transformation. You're welcome, Jen.
Thank you. Good evening, dear viewers. Correction board, no longer the National Coordinator of the Alliance for National Transformation. Our coordinator now is Honorable Sanas.
Interesting transition.
Once you become a candidate, you relinquish the office.
Interesting. These are the issues of transition that we need to discuss. And finally, of course, we're always privileged to have you. Gen Nalunga is the Executive Director with Seatini. Jen, you're welcome.
Thank you so much, and thanks for having me here.
Yeah, thank you. And of course, this conversation, 36 years of NRA, we have Jen, you're here, you're part of the struggle that brought in this government that we have today. And we need to start with you and for you to allow us shed light on the topic of the day. Given Uganda's turbulent history, that is clearly captured in the preamble of our constitution, and of course the background from which the NRA went to the bush to liberate this country. 36 years down the road, is there something that we can celebrate? I think 2 days ago, you sent out a tweet that had quite a lot of reactions over this discussion, and we're here to have us understand. 36 years of NRA.
Yeah.
Anything to celebrate?
Well, the unfortunate thing is that we seem to be still stuck in a vicious cycle as a country. Similar to quite a number of African countries. Because most times you look at these things, in broad terms. You look at the political culture in the country, including ourselves here in Uganda. I think one thing we have really failed, we still have failed to do, and which still needs to be our focus if we want to resolve the challenges that face us as a country. The building of institutions, establishment of functioning systems, so that at the end of the day, anything that is built, be sure it can only be sustained because of the strength of the institutions and because of the systems that are established. And when you are doing analysis of what has been happening here in our country for the last 36 years, those are factors that you have to keep looking at. Because I know the argument of those who are in leadership. And again, that's where we vary in terms of approach. Because their approach is that they compare where we are with where we came from. What is contained with that? we believe that the best way of any organization, any political party that is in power, or the best way you can judge forward movement is to compare where you are at with where you ought to be. It creates a lot of confusion. Right now, even when you hear those who are in power talk, they tell you about tax collections in 1986. They tell you GDP in 1986. They tell you per capita income in 1986. They give you all the indices in health, in education, where we are and where we are at. When you look at it from that perspective, yes, I mean, you can get, a sense that there has been forward movement. I mean, like at the time of, in 86, I think revenue collections were around 40 million United States dollars. When you look at the revenue collections right now. Okay, per capita income, I don't recall where we were at then, maybe 400 maybe or so. Now we're about 900 and something. So you can say that is movement. But you see, when you compare using a different approach, like we think needs to be used, is to ask, if all things were working well, where should we be? And that's why we bring in examples of other countries. Look at other countries in the span of 30 years. Bring in, and it's legitimate, I think, to make such comparisons. But there's nothing anybody else can do that we can't do. So if you look at a country like Korea, if it's South Korea, you look at a country like Singapore, and in the same span of years, if you look from independence, around 60s, South Korea, Singapore, Malaysia were around United States dollars, around 300 in terms of per capita income. 30 years, actually now we are 50 from independence, but most of them leaped in the last 30. They made leaps in the last 30. South Korea's per capita income is now around 25,000 United States dollars. Singapore's per capita income is around 45,000 United States dollars. I don't know where Malaysia is. It had Malaysia. They had problems after Mahathir Mohamad left. The group came in, which became so corrupt, and I think they interfered with the process. But again, they're above 10,000 by now in terms of per capita income. Where are we at? From 300, we're 900, and I saw General Museveni quoting, I think the figure that we're at, I think around 980 United States dollars. As if you get the whole wealth of the country and you distribute it to population, the figure you get is per capita income per head, literally. So if you look at things from that perspective, then you know that we have a problem that we need to tackle and deal with. So that's where we are at now. Maybe I add on later on the challenges that I know have been faced and the wrong approaches by General Museveni and the leaders within the movement. And we are here stuck. And you can hear him singing about the liberation of Uganda, the liberation of the African people. Liberation of the people can't happen unless people are in power.
Thank you very much, Jenny. Sarah, 36 years recording our
history. No, I think NRA stroke NRM went to the bush against the background of the rigged election, gross human rights abuses, and a mismanaged economy. I think those were the three issues. If you watch the several speeches that President Museveni made as a rebel leader then, he was condemning all the things that have manifested under his leadership. He took up to the podium and promised Ugandans a fundamental change. And I think it's time Ugandans really looked a proper definition of fundamental. Because they play around with figures, like General Muntu has said. A state of 3.5 decades. You know, statistics can serve anybody's argument. So the president comes up with figures, true, but against what? And what are our projections? What directions were we headed to as a country? And I will just pick one issue for now, really, the constitution. The constitution that should be in football we have what we call the linesman and then the referee. The constitution should be the referee for all of us. When it says you don't go here, you shouldn't go. It should give command. Now you should do this, and then you do that. And then, if you fight against a mismanaged election, you should take power and then show that this is what an election should be. But I don't know, and maybe General Muntu and others will help us, because I'm closer to Deus. We were children when the NIM captured power. So now do we have a proper election? I think the last election was the worst in Uganda's history. And then you give speeches, saying that you liberated Uganda. Liberated it from what? If you liberated it from a contested election, from gross violations of human rights, as the president celebrated his liberation, we had his army kidnapping the Kakwenza, who had been released by courts of law. And he spent a night in military police after release from prison by courts. So what liberation? If you went to fight against the background of a mismanaged economy, our corruption index is now 141 out of 180 released by Transparency International. So how are you managing the economy, and what took you to the bush to fight against that background of a mismanaged economy? So I think Ugandans really should get serious in looking beyond the rosy speeches and looking at the real quality and content and the nature of growth or regulation in our country.
Thank you very much, sir. Dr. Deus, 1986, we were promised a fundamental change as the swearing in happened. Today, 36 years later, how do you score?
And I was a child. I was very excited. I am sincere on that. I remember when the takeover happened, the first takeover before General Muntu and
the one of the
yes, because we were living in hiding. Somehow, a lot of tension. And when the takeover took place, I remember we had a fundraising at our nearby secondary school, which was going to be taken away. There were unfortunate things going on there. And Wakasisi was the guest of honor. I was in the school band to welcome him against my mother's because I was forced. We were protecting each other after my father had been forced to go and build this, which truth, what do we call it? So there was a lot of tension. So when the takeover happened in the afternoon, there was a lot of excitement. I have never had in history up to today. I've never had a day of excitement. That's when I realized today that we are probably sitting on a time bomb, because anyone who saw us that time would have felt that we were normal people. But when the takeover happened, people rushed to pluck the beards of those who were in power. People were chasing. I was seeing as a little boy, and we were all excited. And so I want to put a feeling to this, because I see, yes, we've moved, but for a team that was trusted by our parents, by the General Muntu, our parents were involved, taking risks. So No one will ever know. And that the nation gave its best boys and girls to pursue what our parents felt was a revolution. We thought too. Later in life we understood it as so. And to fail to give us the value that we expected. The nation's best boys and girls. And I'm talking about Mugisha Muntu and all these very smart young people with the 10-point program, excited deeply we as young people. And you fail to give us great value. Even if it was 10 years, 20 years after. And then we begin to see, and that's where my frustration is. And I told you I'm going to put feeling to this. I'm not going to do it because I was a child and I want to tell the story. And to begin to see in your mid-ages the same things that dramatize you as a child beginning to happen to somebody else, or you begin to suspect they could happen to your children, is very unfortunate. And so what would I have expected today when I look back? That these smart young men and women headed by His Excellency today would have aided this country to pursue progress socially, politically, and economically. We can also add environmentally. And so I would wish to score us on those fronts. Politically, we seem to have absorbed some small few things in democracy. We probably with their frequent elections, but the quality is what my sister here will dissect. Politically, so, but we still see that those who hold an alternative view are being hunted, are being undermined, are being skewed the same way. We probably, because these were differences in the 80s were political in nature. The social would like to have a national ethos, some kind of predictable social, socially we now we were debating this morning about Kakwenza's crime, abuser, and then full figure advisor of the president of Uganda. You begin to, what is happening? She's an award-winning abuser. Well, now this one is just. Now you wonder, what have we become somehow? So what is it? And above all, you see people saved, praying, and then it's disturbing socially. Economically, like General has alluded, the indicators seem to show we were somewhere and we are now somewhere. But we need to go deep and evaluate this from a qualitative point of view, because quantitative may lie to us. This score could be by two people, Sudhir and some other few people. Because when I go home, and I told you I want to put feeling to this, we had a banana plantation which used to give us about 300 batches of bananas every month. Today, you can't even get 50. You can blame us for failing to look after it. But it's true that the soils are exhausted. And so I keep asking, what is the plan for fertilizers, for example, for the ordinary person who is facing this reality of nature, to boost their production? Because then my parents based their agriculture, your parents, on this nature, rains and fertile soils. But now, time has 36 years after, the soils are exhausted a bit and we need to fertilize them. But I look around, there are no plans for fertilization of it to boost the economy. So the real economy of the people seems to be limping. And also when I look at education, the school which used to be our pride, just neighboring school, is now a bit in shambles. Kids have jiggers there. We never used to have that. I want to go qualitative a bit and feel a bit. And yes, it's a complicated picture. It's 36 years after. And I must say, it's not a good feeling for me as a child of
Revolution. Yeah, interesting. Jen, Jen has been talking about how far we've come with the GDP and of course per capita of then and today. And now you as an economist, I would want you to underscore how far we go 36 years later.
Okay, but by the way, I'm not an economist.
Really?
I study the economy,
Yeah.
the people's economy, not the liberation analysis.
Okay.
You know, this debate reminds me, there is a song by Bon Jovi called "The More Things Change, the More They Remain the Same." That yesterday keeps coming back, you know. So it's like we are still, you know, things are, yeah, almost the same, you know. When you look at the 36 years, one of the issues, like Sarah has pointed out, which took this present government into the bush, was the mismanaged economy, and I will talk about that. It's true, during that time I was not a baby, I was a grown-up person. I could see that the economy was in shambles, the GDP was low, per capita income, the consumables were not there. And that was also a spillover from Amin or Botetu. Remember Botetu, there was also a lot of instability. And it wasn't his fault anyway, because he was also fighting for survival. But those whole years of turmoil really worked on, affected the economy. And we see where we are today. Things are better. The economy is moving, the GDP has improved, per capita income has improved. But what I also want to underscore, like the General has pointed out, is because every time I go to the media to talk, I make a disclaimer that, you see, I'm not against government, and I'm appreciative that we have come from far, that a lot has been done. But we need to do better. We need to do better. We need to look at, for example, issues of the quality, like my brother is talking about, the quality of development or economic growth we are talking about. It's jobless. Most of our young people have no jobs, jobless growth. We look at the environment. The environment is in shambles. You know, you can't say Ugoma forest, that it's not going to affect the environment. It is. You know, so you look at the nature of our development, the quality is so poor. And we can do really better. You look at the trade deficit, that saying our economy is okay, but it's it isn't resilient, it isn't strong. Look at just blockage of the Kenya border. Just for a few days and the prices go up, and you know, it's also, you know, you talked about the whole issue of institutions. They are not there. We have liberalized, we have privatized, and everybody is on their own, you know, and that's affecting the poor, affecting the real poor especially, you know. You find the real poor are going to produce their maize. The price, they don't know how much they are going to produce to sell their maize. And they are on their own. My brother was talking about the fertilizers. Let them buy them, because government won't provide for fertilizers. You know, so it's that nature. What are the policies we have, you know, so that we can be able to cushion, you know, the people. And it's our right as citizens, because we pay taxes to government, you know, to be able to look out for our interests. But there are challenges there, the way the economy is being managed, the way we bring in foreign direct investors, you know, they do what they want, they come in, they do what they want, you know. General talked about Malaysia. Malaysia used FDI, to grow the economy. They directed, don't go there, don't go into primary production, go into industrialization, add value, But here you find foreign investors in ports producing pineapples also and exporting them directly, So you find that we have not been able to manage our economy really well. And that's why you see our indebtedness going up, because we can't mobilize resources from our economy, And even those resources which we borrow and which we mobilize, we are misusing them. We are not putting them into the real economy. Today we are talking about agriculture as the mainstay of our economy. But how much is going to agriculture? Are we adding value? Do you see value chains that people are producing pineapples? We are adding value to our pineapples and we are selling. We are selling on our market here and also exporting. We produce the pineapples, we sell them raw on our market, on our roads here. Just tell somebody put them 10 the back of the car at 1,000. And we don't feel guilty. How much is that farm getting in the village? But then we import sellers. And we are happy to take sellers and so this is how we have been managing our economy. And people become impoverished. The young people move. They have been moving from the rural areas into the urban areas. And today we have a phenomenon of the urban poor. We used to talk about the rural poor, but now we have young people who have nothing. They have nothing. So that's why they are not scared of snatching your phone, because they have nothing. So moving forward, although we are coming from far, I think we can do better. We can be able to organize this economy better. We can be able to ensure that people have decent jobs. That people have food, because even food is becoming a challenge because of those issues. No fertilizers, no production. We have no reserves as a country. No reserves. We are talking about fuel reserves. We don't have them. But we don't also have food reserves. If we have a problem today, maybe we have locusts which cover the entire parts of Uganda, we go hungry. So the way we have managed the economy is laissez-faire, it's a jungle law, if there's the powerful, who can be able to survive. So we need to look at the quality, we have moved, but we need also to see that we need to, we haven't reached, where we are supposed to be. We need to move, but while we are moving, there are things which we need to, really to assess and look at.
Thank you very much, Jen. Getting back to you as a young person, you the people that led the journey into where we are 6 years later. But part of those was that you had 3 issues, main issues that really took the NRA into the struggle. Like she has said, mismanagement of the economy, we had issues around the gross human rights allegations, then of course the 1980 elections also. So we want to see, 36 years, where is the problem? Have we really achieved some of these issues that really took the team to the bush?
You can't make any conclusions in terms of the achievements of NRM or make conclusions on the development process in the country until one thing is resolved. The issue of smooth transition, one government handing over to another, I think is at that point when possibly all the things we were discussing will become relevant. I always say it's at that point when NRM will be judged. whatever they have done. Because I see people who get one excited because of the approach to how they do analysis, comparing of, where we are with where we used to be. Because when you give those statistics, you can easily be impressed. I mean, you can look at, for example, like on the kilometers in terms of tarmac roads, you can look at health centers, you can look at primary schools, you can look at a number of those things. You see that there is significant developments in that regard. However, one thing people never ask themselves, we have seen countries that were far much ahead of where we are at now, in comparative terms, if you look at the development processes in those countries. You see a country like Libya, you see a country like where Iraq was, you see a country like where Syria, with the African continent. We used to see one of the examples of the West African countries. Ivory Coast was far ahead. It was the shining example of West Africa. But then after Houphouët-Boigny died, it knows that. We have to keep watching that. Because when a country implodes, wherever you have reached, it doesn't matter. You can lose all that. So to me, in my own mind, whenever we're talking about what we see, we need to keep focused on, I pray to God that we don't implode. But see, we have not managed the transition yet in this country. And that has always been the biggest problem that we've had in this country. There's no way you can discuss 36 years without discussing 60 years. Because that's what plagues us as a country. We had a crisis in 1967, which almost led to internal fights. We survived that. 71, all the mistakes in the 60s from 62 culminated into 71. Because the coup in 71 was not an accident. It had to happen because of the internal mismanagement between 62 to 71. Remember, there was supposed to even be an election in 68, which was postponed. I think it's at that time when it was a trend on the African continent to declare one-party states. And like in Uganda, there was going to be 3+1. If you're going to be a member of parliament, you'd stand in 3 constituencies. You couldn't stand only in your constituency. You had to stand in 3 others in the 3 other sub-regions: West, North, East, Central. The election was supposed to be, I think, in 71, later in the year. Took over in 71. You could see the mess that happened. Because even then, there had been significant movements in terms of the development process between 1962 to 1971. And then Winnows died. And then we got to 79 when Amin was overthrown. Then we got into UNRF. And then one hoped that UNRF, with the experience of the politicians, with the hopefully, with the benefit of hindsight, that will now start building a firm foundation on the basis of which there will be sustained economic growth and development, and also political processes where even when mistakes were made, they would be rectified, but there would be stability on a long-term basis. We didn't get that because UNRF was short-lived. Within about 2 years, fell apart. Went into elections of 1980, which were manipulated. And then we went to the bush. The 6th, those of us who believe that there needed to be a fresh start. So we went to the bush. And we said all the things that we said then, and some still say them. We contend against that. I think when we went, we had 2 different objectives. We all say we wanted to build a new foundation. That's what we all said. We wanted to build institutions. We wanted to ensure that there is zero tolerance corruption. We wanted to see that there are democratic government, there is equality before the law, there is justice. We talked about all those things, but as the Americans say, talk is cheap. At the 5, there was a coup. Then we took over in 86. And then the reality started unfolding because basically, I think tendencies started emerging. While we were voicing similar intentions, but the practices started sorting us out. Well, as it happens in this African continent, because we have got weak institutions, we have got the nascent middle class that is still growing number of African countries. Is not yet strong, it's not yet bold enough, it is not decisive enough to become a countermeasure to abuses of power. So General Museveni and those who eventually became the dominant force, those were two tendencies within the movement. Those who wanted to stick to the objectives, stick the things that we used to state, to walk the talk. Unfortunately, we were weak. We couldn't entirely organize and become the dominant force. General Museveni dispersed us, groups at different times. Because when we wrote the Constitution in 95, we felt at that time, maybe naively so, that now we had crossed the Rubicon. Because we believe that with term limits and the number of checks and safety valves we had inbuilt in the Constitution. But even when errors will be made, even when mistakes will be made, there will be one, corrective action, but also two, a termination point. That the leader would leave, anyone would go in, and then it would help us to build institutions. We need to be a process. We didn't think it was going to be rosy. So when the manipulation of the Constitution 95 succeeded, 96, then we knew that we now have a problem on our hands. And then, of course, the 2017, even the other safety valve, I don't care so much about age. I put a lot more weight on term limits than even on age. But again, it was the only safety valve left in regard to General Museveni. He just manipulated that, and now we are where we are. So you can talk about roads, which is true, because there are so many tarmac roads now all over the country. You can talk about the health centers. You can talk about the primary schools that have been built. You can talk about UPE, which is not only a factor in Uganda, it's just across the whole African continent in any case. Even those who feel good about that progress need to be worried. Because even that will only be credited to NRM at the point when there's a smooth transition. But if we were to go through turmoil again, that will be wiped out.
Interesting.
That's the biggest challenge that we do have. So there's still contention. There are those in the movement who say they're on track. So some of us who are in, believe that the movement lost direction completely. And the worrying thing is culture. Culture is a very critical factor. The political culture, the culture of governance in a country. Many of us were looking at how do you build a new culture. If there is anything that General Museveni, because I keep people will attack him on the development issues and legitimately so, but I think the biggest problem that we face is General Museveni's micromanagement style. The manner in which he manipulates people. Not building people where they are weak to make them strong, but even undermining people where they have strength, so they become weak. So that a whole population is subdued. That's where we are at now. Because when you find a parliament because parliament is supposed to be the cream of society. The elected leaders, they're supposed to be a reflection of society. 96, to find that members of parliament could be manipulated through fear and through money is worrying. 2017, same thing happened, where you find leaders who are supposed to be the cream, the reflection of society, again being manipulated around money. And then you reach a point where there's a state of hopelessness in people, because I interact with so many people, and you hear people saying, what can we do? That's not a good place for any society to find itself. So we can talk about the lack of focus and not doing a number of things in terms of the infrastructure. They can argue that they have gone ahead. I don't pay a lot of attention mostly to those things. Because for a society to move, it's dependent on the people within that society. If you have a people whose spirit is broken, a people who cease to no longer believe in themselves, a people who simply do things even when they know they are wrong just because they want to survive, that society is weak and is highly vulnerable. When you run a country and you find that citizens, a taxpayer, can be bought with 1,000 shillings, 2,000 shillings to sell their vote. And you find that such a society, therefore, has got citizens who don't understand what it means to send the best of representatives. Or to crush a spirit of a people. I keep telling, whenever we are going on some of these mobilization rallies, I would go and ask people, I say, how much is the cost of chicken in different places? It varies by around the same 25,000, 30,000 shillings. And I can tell you, even the poorest of our peasants, you'll find that they have chicken. So I would ask them, they've given you 1,000 shillings, 2,000 shillings to sell your vote. Do you recognize that they have reduced your value to less than the chicken you own, which is in your backyard? So when you reduce a people who start thinking that their value is 2,000, there's a problem in that society. And whatever else we may talk about, even the next group that goes in, that's the biggest problem. You cannot develop a country with people who don't understand their self-worth.
Interesting. Yeah.
Where people are reduced I see them talk about parish models. They have talked about all these things. Let me tell you, it is not money that develops countries. It is the spirit of the people. When people are reduced to a point where they cease to even have any pride in themselves, they are an enslaved people. The movement cannot wriggle out of that because they are part of it. The challenge is going to be those who want to shape the future. That's where the biggest challenge is going to be. Not resources.
Interesting.
How do you revive the spirit of the people to believe in themselves? Because right now, most people are running all over the place looking for free money. There's no country that can develop when you have people who believe like that.
Yeah, interesting, Kanu. As Geno, as we almost break off, Asara, I'm seeing you've been tickled to have to add on something from his submission.
But what can you add to Geno's submission? It's very straightforward. But I want to talk about
on the durability of the Constitution.
Things. Yes. One is that, unfortunately, since independence, Uganda, the state, has had an abusive relationship with the Constitution. Right at the beginning, we had the first election that was won by Ben Chwanuka the late, who became the first chief minister and who should have led the country to independence. Then, because he was Catholic, the first manipulation happened right there. And another election, only in Uganda or African states, the people that won the first election and became chief minister, they led their countries to independence, where the British was the colonial master, except Uganda, where another election had to be arranged for a Protestant to come to power. So we took that wrong footing that has characterized our constitutionalism and the manipulations as who gets power. Then after Obote emerging, of course, as then taking power as prime minister, in the discussions as to who becomes a ceremonial president, another election was manipulated. That was won by the Chabazinga. Then because Obote had an alliance with Uganda, then how do you bring in Masesa? Even go through the cancelling the election? And then they said no, and put Masesa there. So that abusive relationship has never ended. So it's like a woman stuck in a violent marriage. And then you think you are salvaging your children. So what do you do until you die? So 60 years. Fellow citizens, is the official retirement age in this country. We shall be 60 years as an independent Uganda this year. How do we move away from this abusive relationship? Because it will swallow all of us. Do we want to be like a woman or man dying in an abusive marriage? Just to look at the dispensation of justice in this country. Previously, we had the leeway of people caught up, you know, and I want to summarize the democracy by NRM with the 4 issues. One, it's money, the monetization that Geno has talked about, that has reduced our citizenship and sovereignty right to choose our leaders at a value of 2,000. From money, we went into a season of Chiboko. We had even a Chiboko squad that at one time emerged from the Central Police Station officially to brutalize citizens. Yes, we had the background of Kakoza Mtare Karanga Action Plan, thanks Deus. Then Chiboko had a mix of tear gas, presided over by General Kiwun. I don't know where he is now. So we had that nature of democracy. Now we have graduated into kidnap and torture. And this is what people are celebrating. Kidnap, torture, murder, citizens missing, and then you say liberated Uganda. Liberated it from what to what? You know, in athletics, we have celebrated athletes now. Kiprotich, Kiprimo, Cheptagai, and the rest that are winning medals at the world level. In athletics, you know, they started a record and said this one has broken a record. We now have a new record. So which record has President Museveni broken in terms of liberating Uganda? Is it the management of the economy? Our corruption index is 141 over 108. Is it the managing funds that we borrow? Our debt burden, public debt burden, is 54% of GDP. We are highly indebted. Is it the domestic debt? We have 7 trillion in domestic areas as a country. Is it the service? Is it the education? Just the opening of schools. Government schools are corrupt single runners that have stayed home for 2 years. So which record has President Museveni broken in the so-called deliberation? Is it the health? Even the money he borrowed to manage COVID, his cadres stored it under his watch. So what record has he broken to enable us to celebrate? What medal can we give him that he has done this? Is it peace in the region?
We have crossed borders. Even chicken cannot cross to our neighbors.
No, I saw a clip.
We are fighting everywhere.
That's
So what?
a clip about Roba Hospital.
So what record? What is it that Ugandans can touch and say President Museveni has broken this record? Which one?
Interesting. As in the second segment of our conversation, we are going to discuss more on the issue of economics, and I think it's really yes. And they want to bring in Doctor. Seemingly like Geno and of course Sarah was suggesting that the issue would be transition. That could be the only reason that we could say, okay, after this, then the country will look different. Do you think it is, and where, if not, what is failing the people to really mobilize and offer or push for that transition?
Well, of course, definitely it's true. Unfortunately, a leader is best evaluated after they've left, and the quality of living is what is worth the celebration. That's known, it's said everywhere, and I think it's very true. But the transition issue is becoming even more serious because the cultural aspects of it, because you better, the nation, the quality of the people, we are following suit. People now desire to remain in offices and they use, they keep referring to the examples.
Until God removes them.
Even recently, the age, they keep giving the example. So the culture of the people is also changing.
Away from poverty.
And so they are, and that's where it is serious. That are we getting better, even if we were waiting for this quality living? Do people believe in it? It seems the Erites don't, and why? Because they have probably very little to offer in terms of leadership, and they have settled for stomach, feeding and other, aspects of life. They've settled for a small dream of eating, drinking, and sleeping and waking up, and maybe they don't care. And the few who care probably have no way out. They've already been tied a bit. And so, yes, it is true. The quality of living is key. And it will tell us whether the revolution is worth celebrating at that point. And we learn from examples. Recently on our forum, we were discussing, I keep giving my view on Libya. And I have insisted that Libya's situation was a total failure of leadership. I see people arguing imperialists. Who doesn't know that these people have interests and that they are inbuilt in the post-colonial methods upstream in the north? Everyone knows. So a good leader then would craft in such a way that we move towards a cultural revolution, whereby things flow from, by the time you target Sarah, it is with Geno, by the time you target him, it's with me, and we keep, playing you also. But now, to me, if then the culture of the people is deepening on the side of, the don't leave, you've captured it, don't leave it, then who will probably help in this smooth handover? And that's why I think.
But also, I've had the transition on. Now it was Museveni. Now it is Tibuhaburwa. Now I've had it somewhere.
that was my prime minister. But there's also a tweet I saw talking about toxic talk on transition via the sun. Of course, he has as much rights as a child of this country as myself, and he should be given chance to say himself to the people. But it can't possibly be an issue of privilege.
Birthright.
It's It can't be, because then we'll go into the dirty things again. We'll be left in a dirty pot somewhere, like pigs, maybe, fighting over these rotten things. So, indeed, I mean, it's without a proper transition, we can't possibly celebrate. But I wanted to come in on the issues of human capital development, which General Muntu, because those are the issues that really lead to the capacity building, the civic competence, building civic competence. And I've been following President Yoweri Museveni since childhood. When I went to Tanzania, it even deepened, because as a student, I admired Nyerere, and I felt President Museveni was also, and his team were admiring him. And so I kept following. And there was a speech made to a conference in West Africa. And the president was on the spot. And he was comparing, I think, Nigeria or West African countries. I remember, I can't remember but I have the speeches, I recall that. And he was comparing it with South Korea. And he was saying, look, West African country, Nigeria, has a lot of oil. And he mentioned figures to that effect. And he compared it with South Korea, which had nothing but human beings.
Yeah.
And he was saying, look, you can only get this much billions in terms of oil exports. But these Korean people, without any serious resource to sell out, they are exporting this much. And it was way above, like 100 times way above. And so to me, I got attracted to that President Museveni and his team are interested in human capital development. Developing this resilient African, on which then you can sing your Pan-Africanism ideas. The total independence of creative people and with self-determined to build themselves. And then he also gave another speech, and I think this was NRM in Jinja. It was a retreat. They called him to talk about the revolution, what it was. And he again cancelled these colleagues of his on that. And that's where some frustration is also, because I've been in the education world, and I'm not happy. On the basis of those, very serious pronouncements of a leader you admired young, of a personality of your lifetime. And with the best that we can count, with the best people that the nation had, and you can count them. General Muntu, the messages, all these very powerful, smart, well-meaning people. The late Museveni and all this that contributed to Uganda, the smartest we could have. Amama was the best. And to fail to use them very well, to get these ideas and hand them over to us and our children. It's
very unfortunate. That's a very interesting way to end this first segment of our conversation. And of course, while we come back, we'll discuss, dig deep into the economic growth in general, and of course, management of our public resources, and of course, then we'll discuss a little on social. Please stick to this conversation. We are still coming back for the second round, and of course, our conversation is on Civic Space TV on our YouTube channel. Please subscribe. Hit that subscribe button and be part of the conversations every time. But also on the chat show UG, on the Twitter, we are there, Civic Space TV also, we are on there. And on Facebook Live, Instagram, we are on there. Please be part of these conversations every time. Let's have a short break and return.
Violence, anger and hatred, misery, loss and pain. No, this shouldn't be the situation after elections. Fellow youth and Ugandans, now that elections are over, it is time to embrace our differences in opinion, political affiliations, and other issues that tend to divide us. We need to refocus on all the things that are beneficial to us, our families and friends. It's our duty to restore peace in our communities, and even as we participate in democratic processes, it's important that we do it with dignity. Say no to post-election violence. This message is brought to you by Center for Constitutional Governance in partnership with Action Aid Uganda.
Welcome back from that short break, and of course we're here energized by Inspire Africa Coffee. That's where we get our energy to discuss some of these issues. We're still analyzing the 36 years of NRM, of course, politically, socially, and economically. Just yesterday, the celebrations were ongoing, 36 years, and the people joining here to discuss this is I have been pleased to be joined by Gen. Gen, of course, thank you very much for being with us always. Jen, it has been a big honor to have you here. Sarah, always a honor, and Dr. Kamunyu, yeah, the MUASA chair. Thank you very much. And we just finished literally the whole overview and tackled the political aspect of it. We need to discuss the economics of the 36 years. Yeah, and Jen, I need to start with you on that. We want to score on the economic, the general economic growth and management of public resources, but on the issues of employment levels, poverty, and the standards of living of our people. 36 years. How do we score?
Okay. Maybe before we do that, to go back on the political side, I was telling Ken here that sometimes there is an elephant in that room, and sometimes when you discuss other issues, they are so trivial. You know, we're talking about the issues of the transition. That if we don't put that right, you know, that whatever we are talking about putting in place might come to, you know, to nothing. You know, yesterday I was in office for up to 9 because I had a webinar and I wouldn't do it at home, and we didn't know there would be fireworks at Kabira. We had some few people in the office, and I saw people running, scared. You know, the fireworks were so, you know, the bombs, oh, poof, poof. And somebody was saying,
This take over.
You know, so, and I was in my office, I came out and said, what's happening? We are dead. You know, so
The transition is happening.
You know, so what I want to say what I thought then was really, we almost like we expecting it, we are fearful, you know, because everybody was scared. You know, everybody was scared, looking for where to hide. So the issues which General has raised are really critical. They are almost always at the back of our mind. And this is also going to affect our economy, because no serious investor really can be able to come when they hear something going up, pooh, and they think they are going to run across the board and leave their investment. So the issue of a transition, predictable, somebody to know that there are going to be elections and somebody will take over and things will remain normal. For me, it's important, not just politically, but also economically. We need to have that certainty. And that's why Kenya, even Tanzania, you know, I just couldn't believe what happened in Tanzania. I see this lady, the constitution says this, that lady goes and she's sworn in, and I said, I wish Uganda were like that. I was saying,
Maybe it will happen.
Even in Burundi, you know. So I don't know whether we need to pray hard or we need to do something, but that predictability is really important. Like I said, it's affecting our economy. People, you see people taking their monies out. Those people have money. In fact, when you look at the WikiLeaks and the Paradise Papers, they had some papers where about illicit financial flows and how people are hiding money in tax havens. There were some Ugandans were implicated because of that lack of predictability, lack of security. So they were comfortable putting their money there. People investing in Mauritius, which is a tax haven. So the economy is also ailing because of that. So when you look at the entire economic growth, like I said, the economy is growing. What Sarah you have said, the economy has to grow, like giving birth. Today you have a baby, the next day you have another one, and the economy is growing. But it doesn't have to grow, by accident. Development is not by accident. We need to plan. We need to plan for it. But the way I see the planning or the lack of planning in Uganda is a challenge, because you look at initiatives which come from nowhere. Today we have the Paris development model. The other time we had a Tandikwa operation was creation, Sujui, what, you can't develop a country like that. You can't. And that's why you see we have no jobs. People are jobless. The rural area impoverished. And there's a link between economic growth and politics. Because people are impoverished, I liked the way the general has put it. That lack of the way the spirit becomes almost destroyed, people lining up for a kilo of sugar. I saw the other time that our prime minister, I don't know where she was, handing money and people fighting to be in that line. And people just fighting. What Jen was saying without any self-respect at all. When I was
and the one in yellow was the one who was not in yellow.
There was a young man, very desperate, and I saw him. He had fought her, but he had on a red t-shirt. They gave another one. I said, "Poor man, poor."
Terrible.
When I was growing up in the village, there was a saying, "You don't feed me. I won't do that. You don't feed me." People were that pride that don't push me around. We don't have that anymore. So you find that because of the poor economy, that we have managed the economy, and maybe it has played into some people's hands to be able to manipulate people, because people are desperate, by the way, in the villages. You go there, people don't have money for school fees. People don't even buy books. They say, it's free, And when you talked about the human capital, we are going to have challenges in 5-10 years down the road. Because in the rural areas, you look at the education, it's unbelievable. But maybe I want to conclude my what I want to say by asking what went wrong with us Ugandans. We used to discuss that Ugandans, we are docile, that maybe because we didn't fight for our independence. But when you look at Kenya, you look at South Africans, the upper side, they fought and, they were able to toughen up, to fight for their rights. That I remember there was a lecture at Makerere, and someone who usually says we are frog marched into independence. They take your independence, we never fought for it. That maybe that's why we are so docile, but I don't know, General, how you can be able
But we have
to
gone
put
through 3 wars. We have fought 3 wars.
internally.
Yes.
Yes. So I don't know what has gone wrong, but I think as Ugandans we should put some more, I don't know whether energy, but we need to fight for our rights. We need to have self-respect. We need to know that this is our right and be able to fight for it.
Thank you. Juno, we on the issue of the land laws and of course the conflict on land.
Yes.
I would want you to have a take on that, but also the general regional production. Why, how far are we faring?
Land is a reflection of the manifestation of the greed, really, that is taking deep roots in this country. And that's why you find that people who have got power and they're abusing their offices, people who have got money are trying to muscle, small poor people off land. But it just shows you the level at which the system has degenerated, at least in regard to acquisition of property. There is no longer that thinking that, yes, you must work for money in a legitimate way, and if you want to build wealth, you must build wealth through legitimate ways, transparent ways. So that's no longer the issue. It's like if you have a position that you can use, if you have money, just do whatever you want to do. One hopes that it is going to be stopped and then we can reverse it. If it continues the trend that we see, then you're going to see more and more crisis. It's just a reflection of what is, we have not yet reached where people are thrown out of their own house and they are taken over. But the trend, if it continues degenerating, we will reach there. But you see, even if we reach there, that wouldn't be the first time. We have seen that happen before. That's why our concentration has to be, how do we build a new culture? So that regardless of who the leader is, that there are things which society knows, these are do's, these are don'ts. And whether they are in the law or not in the law, that you simply can't do them because you'll face resistance. Because we have laws, but if laws are not backed by the will of the people, by people who are determined to say, that's wrong, that's right. I pay taxes. It doesn't matter who you are. You can't do wrong if you're in a position of leadership because you are getting paid from the taxes I pay. That's what we have to keep building towards. We are stuck in between there. It's a struggle. I believe by God's grace we will get there. The most frightening thing is to bump into people who have given up. That's frightening. You find educated people who say, what can we do? You went to school, you reach university, and you ask a question like that? Because education basically is supposed to, broaden your mind. And incidentally, I can't understand how one can be educated and be fearful at the same time. Education is supposed to open your mind to understand the possibilities that there are, to look at challenges of a situation and know that there are certain short-term challenges that may be difficult, but knowing that because you want something much better, that you must go through this and that you will actually go through it. Maybe some people can get hurt in the process. But if you've read, you'd be able to understand that all societies go through these situations. But you want something good, and you can't understand that there must be sacrifices for it, then you are miseducated, basically, in as far as I'm concerned. But it's a process again. We have to keep building. We have to keep building. And on the area of the biggest challenges that I noticed on the side of the economy, and those who are in power need to keep really focused on those things. I hope they are. But partly, the problems are their own creation. I don't know whether they can resolve those problems with the same minds that have created the same problems. I don't know. Mostly it is a very difficult situation where you find that the mind which has created a problem can be the same mind that can solve that problem. It's really a big challenge. I don't know. Some are going to think that that's possible. I don't think it's possible. But we'll just voice out things. Hopefully they'll do them. I doubt whether they'll do them. That means those who want to take over power, or those who want to shape the future, must keep focusing on those things. We have to look at the date. Sarah has talked about that, 54% of GDP. With a growing population, another 25 years, you're going to hit about 100 million. We have a high level of joblessness. Internal domestic debt. And then the areas which are the most, where we have got comparative advantages, like in agriculture, look at the focus. I have never understood whether it's deliberate, whether it is being inept. I don't know exactly which it is. Because what Genome 7 talks about, almost throughout, is agriculture. 36 years. But look at the budget. Never listen to what anybody says, whether it is NRM, even if NT was in power or any other party, never listen to what they say. Their intentions, their focus will always be seen where the money is. If you want to know the priorities of a country or a government, don't hear what they say. Look at the money, look at the budget. It talks about agriculture. We are still at 3.8% of the national budget. Not anywhere close even to the commitments that we have made, even on an African level. I think the Maputo declaration is 10%. Some countries have surpassed it. Understand the country like Ethiopia is at around 20%. We are 3.8%. And we are talking about development. That's the largest area where there are more people. 70% of our population are peasants. We are going to wait and hopefully, maybe magically, the parish model may work. I really pray that it works. I have my own doubts, but you know what? The taste of the pudding is in the eating. Let's wait and see what happens there. But agriculture is a critical area. You know, and then the human capital development.
Yes.
It is a critical area of investment. Because even without natural resources, without agriculture, without even one single mineral, a country can develop when it has got a highly developed human resource. Japan is a clear example. Singapore is a clear example. Singapore is just a rock of an island. I've never been there, but you just see it, you know. Japan, it only had forests and fishing, nothing else. But you see how they developed steadily because of the human capital development. Look, okay, there is UPE and there is USE. Everything here is politicized. Because it's not only Uganda which has taken the direction of UPE and USE. Other countries around us have done it. Many
It's a World Bank program.
So, yes. But you notice that countries which were focusing on the future seriously concentrated a lot on quality.
Yes.
You create wider inclusion, but you don't compromise on quality. Because the moment you compromise quality, it's going to impact on you where you are heading.
True.
Then health. Because even if you have people who are educated, you're going to put them wherever you want to push them, and they are not healthy, you have a problem on your hands. We hope that they are going to keep carrying out the measures we hear them talk about in the areas of health. I think health is again another area where people, I think, they may not voice it, but I have a feeling that the majority of the people are frightened all the time, thinking that if I get sick, what will happen? Because I mean, how many people can pay 5 million, 10 million, 15 million, 20 million? Some of them much more than that. So many people know that if I get seriously sick, I may actually die. It's a problem. The ones who are in there, we hope that they'll continue putting money there, hopefully, and if they put their money, it won't be stolen, because that's another disease. I want to end up with that. Corruption is so deeply entrenched. The movement is incapable. Genome 7 himself, I hope there is no more member of the movement who still has any doubt about the will to fight corruption. Genome 7 himself publicly harangued his own appointment, Betty Kami, when she said, let's cut out lifestyle audit. Yes. Genome 7 publicly warned her, said, you know what? You may frighten people who are investing money here.
And they take it
take it out. You tell me how they fight corruption. Honestly. Because if you don't tackle the big fish and you spend time running after these small guys, the cows, you cannot fight corruption and succeed. And there is no way the moment you fail to crack corruption, there's no way you can effectively invest in all these other areas we're talking about. There's no way you can effectively tackle debt, repayments. And at the same time, simultaneously put adequate resources in the areas of need, like in the human capital development, in agriculture, in other low-hanging fruits like tourism. You simply can't. Discipline is an absolute requirement, because discipline is the one which determines how you manage national resources.
Yeah, true.
So, you deal with the situation as it is, not as it ought to be. So in the period when NRM is still hanging on to power, we're only hoping that maybe somehow, maybe miraculously, something can trigger them to wake up, and then they move in the positive direction. But in the event that such a miracle doesn't happen, then anybody in Uganda, whether they're part of government, but maybe they are more focused and more objective, because not all of them are involved in this whole gravy train things, but some of them are there for survival. And everybody, including Ugandans who are not even in politics, who want to shape a better future, have got to start working towards how it should be shaped. The future is not going to happen by accident. Nothing ever happens. Nothing good. I should qualify. Nothing good ever happens by accident. Bad things happen all the time. And planned, actually, when there's no planning, most times it's the bad things which happen.
Interesting.
But for anything good to happen broadly and on a sustained basis to cater for the needs of the people, it must be through deliberate, conscious, systematic, sustained actions. Therefore, there must be people who are committed to do that. That's where we are.
Yeah, thank you, General. Sarah, on the issue of production per region, but also on access to credit and credit ratings, how do you score us? 36 years.
You know, the economy we celebrate as a country is a numerical growth. And like Jen put it, so you have been married for 20 years, producing a child every 2 years, then you gather a village and say, I have a happy marriage, I have 10 children, and it's 20 years. But every night you beat your wife and children. They are not assured of a meal. They are not going to school, or if they are going to school, the quality is not there. When they fall sick, and I'm not saying prayer is bad, but poor people normally resort to prayer on issues that they need science, that they need medical. Then you meet somebody and say, my child is sick. I am praying. You can't even buy Panadol. And then you say, we have 10, 20, 10 children. What is the quality of those children? What is the quality of the life you are giving them? So in Maslow's hierarchy, in economics, we have the self-actualization group. And in Uganda, we are 1% of the top patronage groups. Because if you look at the way we do the economy has been built on politics, royalty and patronage. So if you have access to State House, then the president can write for you. Unfortunately, the last one I saw was for his son-in-law. My son-in-law is directing, yes, he wrote directing that they pay Audrey Grabog. My son-in-law had businesses in South Sudan. He has not been paid. I hereby pay him. Yes. But so how about to other people? How about to other people? So your son-in-law, you shamelessly write a letter. Why don't you make a call if it is about your family? You write a letter, it is saturating,
pay my son in law, he lost money in South Sudan. I mean, Parliament has been going through this journey, and journey, you have statistics of people who lost. But you selectively pick what? So that is the nature of the economy. So if we saw the billionaires who were asking for bailouts after 2016 elections. We have put money in Muze's campaign. So please allocate taxpayer money to us. We need money in our business. The top, shamelessly, the top. I think that is a demonstration that we have no economy beyond the numbers. Because if you are the top richest people in Uganda, and you are moving every office, looking to root the money from poor people, then how rich are you? How rich are you? Beyond the figures.
Asking for tofali.
Yes. How rich are you? You look at the stimulus package. We attempted a stimulus package under COVID. Who are the beneficiaries? You see the technical, people who can pick calls. We are given stimulus money to build the shopping arcades.
And we borrowed it.
We borrowed money for mitigating economic impact on COVID. So when you bring issues of access to credit is tagged patronage. Is some of us who sit here and speak all day, we cannot borrow. We are considered a political risk. How do you rent that one? She's always on TV talking. Yes. But this is the nature of the economy. It is. When you go to the banks, the money, all money put in UDB, unfortunately, goes to the patronage networks. Unfortunately. And this is taxpayers' money. And I wish Parliament can stop it. Because it is not distributed on merit. Even before it is allocated, as the debate begins, they start calling each other. We are putting this money, prepare your paperwork. The same happens in the procurement processes. There is this thing in the budget, prepare. That is how the economy is run. And President Museveni is aware. He's aware. And then he goes and tells his citizens, rise. I have developed the economy. Let's go to the pockets of the ordinary people. Deus talked about the immediate pre-NRM days. Even amidst the war, because of the cooperative movement, household incomes were there. People could take their children to school through agriculture. Agriculture was productive. We knew the regions and know in Busoga, I can get sugarcane, I can get, if you need copper, the railway was built according to the cash crops that regions were producing. That was the mapping. But today, if you go on Teba and you say we want to construct a road, we saw during Chogam how people diverted Chogam roads to their homes and hotels. So that is the nature of. So when we say that we have built these whatever kilometers of road, it includes those private roads that are built using taxpayers' money. You see, if a vice president build a road to my hotel, it is, the Kenyans have a saying of it's our time to eat. For us, it is permanent. There is a discussion on the table. Please come and tamak my compound. And it is part of the national what? Program. So really, we need to interrogate this question on the economy deeply. We need to interrogate what goes to a citizens' pockets. And we have 38 citizens outside the money economy. So what economy have you built? If you're outside the money economy, it means that even on your phone, you are not receiving mobile money. You are not even, or you don't have a phone. And we saw during the cash relief for food for the very vulnerable of our society, the Prime Minister then said, some people are not where? They cannot disburse money.
Yeah, because they have no funds.
Those are outside the money economy. So what is the nature of this economy? And whose economy are we talking about? Who owns Uganda? I think we need to have these debates in
the
their
conversation.
depths
Yeah, true.
and interrogate the value away from numbers of an abusive marriage, and then you are celebrating the number of children that you can't even feed.
Yeah, thank you very much, Sarah. Of course, these are ongoing conversations that we always have here on Civic Space TV. But Dr. Deus, we need to go to the social service delivery and, of course, the social lives of the people. I need you to score on the education delivery and, of course, and the health services.
You're asking this question when the situation is very disturbing, because we've been tested by COVID. I think the resilience of our education system has been tested by COVID already, and we can know what to expect into the future. We could predict that, for example, at the end of 2 years, they inherited 40% of the inherited cohort of the pre-COVID will drop out of school, and due to conditions that can be controlled by government. For example, for countries emerging from pandemics and disasters, one would expect some kind of very serious policy, education aid, aiding young people who lost out or who are vulnerable to the pandemic to be able to continue. Serious policy. I've read about such in Indonesia, in the US even, after way before, long time ago, where education aid, some kind of policy to aid those who really are in dire need, to stop this 40% of the cohort. I'm talking about those who went through COVID, who were in school, from dropping off. And so the question is being asked at a time when really it's terrible. And I want to borrow from a book I've read from Page, and I encourage people to read it. It's called Poor Economics by Daflo and Benange. They are Nobel Prize winners. And they wrote about the economics of poverty. And they even have an example in Uganda and Bushenyi and Rwanda. And they were talking about education budget and the support to institutions of primary education, secondary education. And they were worried about many things, including the trickle down. Let's say we send 1 million from the center to go to a primary school X in my village. Only 20,000 arrives. Now, can that support? So they were not surprised that and they said, no, this is a problem of civic competence. It goes back to General Muntu's argument. People who cannot stand their own dose, and they don't know, maybe they think the 20,000 is even a blessing, maybe they don't deserve it. And what do we do? It's our fault. But they were saying, no, we need to increase what really trickles down. And then they were arguing the citizens must demand for this. And it makes sense somehow, but who builds this citizenship is because then I go back to those things I learned some time back, and I see them, they can't fill up. Where, for example, we have a political party with an ideology on which it rallies society, and then it has production systems. And in the ideology, they define the social, including the education systems, etc. And that it's on the basis of this that we evaluate ourselves and where the society is moving. And then you ask yourself, right now as I'm talking, the kids who are at home who were affected by COVID, they're going back to school. Fees seemingly is small, 50,000 for UPE. But these children are really dramatized. They have no social support. The teachers are also there. They don't know what is happening, and the whole situation is there. So
from Benanji's argument, you can see that on the education front, a little still goes to developing a child of this country. And they had statistics, and they compared us with India, with Indonesia, the developing world. And they were really looking seriously at this. And then I want to draw, because this book really is it's not, they are narratives based on anthropological studies and really a lot of tests done. And on health, the cost of health. Why? And they argue, they have a very good argument, and they're talking about the death of traditional knowledge systems. And this is where I wanted this very smart group of the General Muntus to really guide this country, whereby we run our health system, the Western health system, alongside our traditional health system. This is done in the India and China. And they argue that when this is closely monitored, then Western medical systems are checked and they become less expensive because you have a traditional health system also, which cuts the cost half. But what is happening now, we've all gone Western. We are, my grandmother and my auntie, who is 100 years now, she's in the hospital by at the moment. She is subjected to the assaults of the pharmaceutical companies. This is a needing woman with no social security, with nothing. That's in the US. And she has to pay for the cost of all this. And one could say, but they are government hospitals. I don't know. You go there, you see, you will probably be told to go and buy the medicine, the main medicine. And so the cost of healthcare, because of this, the cost of healthcare gets high, and because the cost of education is also high, and the bill for health is also high, then you have basic healthcare, nutrition, and all these things at their lowest, because a population that eats well is less likely to fall sick. And so because of these stresses, which are all high, and there's no really serious aid, they can't eat well, they can't, so they have no choice, by the way, also to line up, because then once the body is not well fed, once you even lack the basics in the brain, and the only thing you can do is to line up for a day. And so,
Doctor, okay, now as we are almost standing to the closure in giving our parting shots, but also the way forward, I would want to ask, what is the way forward on the questions of course, national dialogue, the national consensus and peaceful transition in Uganda, but also building the economy that works for all.
The other day I watched a video which was on trending on social media, a school in my home district, where jiggers, the kids were sweeping a classroom. It didn't look like it's a school in my backyard in Shema. It's shame on me, shame on us, and shame on their rights. And I posted, and I want to build on that. I posted that it's time we had an education conference. So that's the aspect of dialogue that I would build on to have even a dialogue in all areas, political dialogue. It's high time. We need to seriously interrogate the economics of the country. We shouldn't talk about these figures without talking about employment and quality of employment, without talking about factories and their value chains. Because a small winery in a small town like Montefalco in Italy will have a value chain. You'll see jobs right from the farm all through to the factory, and marketing jobs all the way to small villages in China. We need to interrogate these and stop talking about, yes, they look there for politics, but people are facing the drama for real. And we, like Major Mshega, maybe I'll end like that. Major Mshega one time saying on Radio West, I think Erites should stop making themselves drunkards. in broad daylight. We need to discuss and for real and act appropriately.
Interesting.
And move this society. For my side, like I told you, I'll put feelings to this. I see these things, and my foundations are built from the empathy point of view, and sometimes I cry about them. I must be sincere because it's very unfair to see that Airites, African Airites especially, are unable to play the politics of the time that can empower us to tame the excesses of the global political economy. Because for real, global corporations, they're after their profits. They're after, and it's really terrible. It's tough. And developed countries are ready to take whatever they could keep us in. And that our own people, the smartest in our society, the people rallied to, are unable to empower us to deal with this. And it hurts. But like you said, we have to keep working. We have to keep on job, pushing for the best of the outcome.
Yeah, thank you very much, Doctor. Sarah, we shall move like this, but of course we'll end with general. We will give us our of the general closure. So we are talking on the way forward, on the national dialogue, but also importantly, the national consensus, peaceful transition, and the economy that works for all, the way forward. And your parting shots.
Dr. Kamunyu's emotional submission. Almost. but it's painful, and I understand. It is very painful. It is, you really talking about these things is very painful. I wish we could get a critical mass to be on the same page, that we are analyzing these issues. The Luwero consensus that was generated by our guest, General Muntu and team, I mean, his being in a different grouping altogether is evidence that the Luwero consensus broke a long time ago. Then in 1995, during the constitutional making process, there was an attempt to generate a national consensus on how we want to be governed. That has been shredded over time. So now the only consensus governing, I don't think it is still even NRM. It could be Rashtura consensus. If you look at the power dynamics in this country, and the narrowing power base as who controls what, either it is zeroing down to Churhura consensus. I know many people don't understand and the differences and then think it is Banyankore consensus, but it is not Banyankore consensus. So we have a very narrow power base in this country. Even the impunity that is growing and growing, when you trace it to that power center that is not constitutional, that is not official, it is only obesity in terms of impunity. And I don't know whether we can cure it. There has been several attempts of generating consensus in this country. But, you know, after elections and the violence that had happened, then the president made an address and saying people were pushing him to talk to opposition. And he said, I know their address. I know their address. If I want to talk to them, I know where to find them. And that is the vulgarization of consensus in this country. I think it can't go beyond that level. So I don't think we can have consensus built around how we want to be governed, around an agreement on a functioning or working economy for all that should work on known principles, known values, and on merit. I don't think it is possible with this team. But it is possible with Ugandans. Ugandans can rebuild their spirit. Ugandans can
caucus and restore their nation.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Sarah, for those words. And Jen?
Thank you so much. The issue of the economy, but also again also politics. I think it's really important, going back to what Jen said about planning. You can't stamp on development, you know. That, oh, I have knocked myself, I'm now developed, you know. We need to plan. And for me, the biggest challenge I see in Uganda is the lack of planning or the misplanning. We were analyzing the budget framework paper. You know, when you look at agriculture, because today it's agriculture industrialization, but unless what the good doctor was saying, you link agriculture to industry, to trade. Unless you do that chain, you are putting people who are producing in greater poverty, because they will produce, they won't have markets. So we need to look at that entire value chain. But when you look at the budget framework paper, the way it has been organized, it's we have analyzed, you can provide a copy. You find that this country might need to separate planning from the Ministry of Finance, so that we can have a Ministry of Planning. Because when they are together, that's why for me I think government is throwing money at everything. Parish model, we are giving them, how much is it per parish? 30 million each one. You know, we are throwing money at people, but money will never develop this country. So we need to plan, better. And I think it's important that we separate, and we need to rationalize our economy the way it works. You asked a question about credit. Today we are borrowing to own land. Government is borrowing, putting money in UDB, UDC, MUASA, the youth fund, no, which is not working also. And they are talking about financial inclusion. We sold off our UCB. And we are depending, almost government doesn't have any hand in the banking sector, you know. That's why, yet it's so easy for government to be able to mobilize resources from the people who are banking, because all of us put money in banks and be able to own land. But today, you can't tell these foreign banks that lend to agriculture, lend to industry. They won't.
It's a risk.
They won't. And that's why, even when government says, the central bank says, the CBR, the lending rate is so much, they ignore, because they are getting orders from outside. So we need to organize our economy. You asked a question about land, then the issue of corruption. It's because land is the only valuable thing which we have. Somebody steals money here, you put in land, you know, you put it in a plot of land. But systematically, when you look at the history of Britain, they pushed people for the land to go into the industries, to work in industries. And they put in place policies, don't subdivide the land. The land belongs to the first son. Others go into industry. Systematically planned. So we need to plan for this country to see where we want to go and what kind of policies can be able to help us to go there. Lastly, the issue of the health. COVID showed us that our health system is very weak. Remember when they had told us don't cross the districts. Some districts didn't have even a health center too. No, it wasn't there. And what you are saying, doctor, is right. We are looking at curative. We are supporting the big farmers, the pharmaceutical industry, without looking at the primary health care, looking at even telling people drink boiled water. Where is the toilet? Where is the bathroom? You know, that's what we had. Your babies, this is when I was growing up. There was a health officer going from house to house, ensuring that you have a drying rack. If you don't have it, you are in trouble. Outside bathroom, a latrine, water, boiled water, where is your pot? Fruits around the house. you know. So we need to go back to that system, you know. So there is a lot which we need to do, just to planning, so that people live. We live once, by the way. Let people really live in dignity. Even if we are not talking about people being rich, you know. People don't want riches. People want to live in dignity. And I think that's what we should strive for.
Yeah, thank you very much, Jen. And finally, Jeno, the issues of consensus building, transition, and the national dialogue, of course, with the economy that works for all.
When you look at the trend since 1962 here in Uganda, as seems to be the case even in other African countries, the journey at the different times where countries find themselves is determined by who the dominant group is in that society, more so when it comes to governance. Because it's a natural process. It's unavoidable. Everywhere where you find human beings, you're going to find human beings who have got, they fall into two tendencies. There are human beings who just don't care about anybody else. As long as they can advance their own interest, it doesn't matter. Others will also survive somehow. There are human beings who are broader in thinking, who recognize that for them to prosper, they need to working towards prosperity of the whole that would lead their own prosperity as individuals. Whether it is conscious or unconscious, that's how it plays out. Now that manifests in different ways when such people get into positions of responsibility. Those who are driven by survival of the fittest, when they are the dominant group, that reflects the politics of a country, and literally also the development process. And you can look at Uganda right from 1962 until now. It is not that there have not been good men and women in governments, in parties. They have always been there. Men and women who would have wanted a country to be built on a firm foundation of managing national resources, where ensuring that there are transparent means of utilizing the national resources, ensuring that there is justice, ensuring that there is fairness, ensuring that there is equality before the law, ensuring that there is fairness. They have always been there. But at no point have they ever been the dominant group. And until that happens, the trends we have had since '62 will remain. They'll manifest in different ways. There'll be variations, yes, but the general trend will be the same. So what we need to do, more so as we are moving towards another transition, I don't know how it will be, but it is clear anybody who is not living in a state of denial can see that there's going to be change at some point. The only thing you can't put your finger on is the day, but it will happen. Change will happen. In my own estimation, Ugandans want to shape the future to be better than it has ever been. Have to recognize that they have to start working to see how they can build a dominant group of people who want to see good for society, want to build institutions, want to establish systems of governance, want to ensure that there is justice, there is fairness, that there is transparent ways of managing national resources. And then once they recognize wherever they are, in whatever groups they are, to build themselves so that they can cause that shift. If that happens within the movement itself, and they can turn the tables against the crooks, that would be good for the country. I have my doubts whether that can happen, because I know how that system operates. But they can work with those who are on the outside. People who are in opposition parties, people who are in civil society, Ugandans who are not in politics, but who are in business, who are in all areas of life, but who want to see a better country. Not everybody has got to get engaged in politics direct, but there are ways in which they can support those who are in politics to be better organized. Because the danger I see is for people who think that when change happens, everything will be okay. If there's any form of danger thinking it is that, the balance of forces have to shift in favor of people who want to do what is right, what is in the best interest of society. But they also have to be coordinated. They have got to be organized. So in as far as I'm concerned, even as the attempts to talk about building consensus on a national scale between organizations and all that, within organizations themselves, there must be some of the organizations where the dominant force is of those who want to change society for the better. Because the moment change happens, and there's no group which has got such a dominant force within it that can influence the country in a better direction, yes, change will happen. But the trend will remain the same, as we've noticed since 1962.
Thank you very much, Jen, for that profound ending. And of course, thank you very much, Jen. Thank you very much, Sarah and Dr. Kamunyu, for being part of this conversation today. And thank you very much, our dear viewers out there, for following and being part of this conversation also. And of course, quite this part of the ending has been emotional. Dr. Kamunyu almost had us emotional, and of course, I hope that the emotions out there and the emotions that have been aroused here would allow us to cause the much needed change that we need. This conversation is still ongoing on our social media handles and on YouTube, Civic Space TV. Please be part of these conversations every Friday. And I've been your host, Demaino Masesa. May God bless Uganda.